The temple courtyard lay under a pale dawn, its silence broken by the voice of Master Hiroshi, who said, "Daniel, you have lost your way." Daniel froze, his breath shallow as the words shattered the calm within him. Claire stood nearby, her eyes widened with sorrow, whispering, "He cannot mean this." The skeptic Edward smirked faintly and muttered, "I told you these illusions would crumble." Daniel's chest tightened as shadows of his past whispered, dragging guilt into his heart. Mei observed quietly, her serene gaze reflecting pity, while Samuel walked past in silence, embodying the weight of unspoken truths. Master Hiroshi's tone did not falter as he continued, "Your search was never about finding what is outside, but escaping yourself." Daniel felt the earth beneath him crack, his identity crumbling with every syllable. His lips trembled. "If I have lost my path, then what is left of me?" The temple air thickened, the dawn now heavy with despair. Daniel staggered back, heart pounding as he said, "Master, how can I be lost when I have walked this path with devotion?" Master Hiroshi stood still, his silence deeper than words. Edward laughed coldly, saying, "Your devotion means nothing when built on illusion." Claire whispered, "Daniel, listen to him. This pain is not an ending but a turning." Mei remained calm, her eyes lowering to the stone path, while Samuel paused mid-step, his stillness echoing the weight of the moment. The temple bell chimed faintly, as if mocking Daniel's despair. Daniel clenched his fists and said, "I have given everything, yet I remain empty." Master Hiroshi replied softly, "To cling to emptiness is to hold a cup that cannot be filled." Edward chuckled, shaking his head, "And still you call this wisdom?" Claire stepped forward, her voice breaking, "Daniel, please see this as a gift, not a curse." Samuel's silence deepened the air, while Mei whispered gently, "Even in despair, a door may open if you allow it." Daniel's vision blurred as tears threatened to fall. The temple bell tolled again, deep and resonant. Daniel whispered, "If even emptiness is beyond me, then who am I?" Master Hiroshi closed his eyes and said, "You are the silence between questions." Edward laughed louder, mocking, "Silence will never fill your hunger." Claire wiped a tear and said, "Daniel, you are not broken, only afraid to let go." Mei raised her head, her calm gaze steady. Samuel's shadow stretched long across the courtyard, embodying unspoken weight. Daniel collapsed to his knees, his voice cracking, "Then let me be nothing." The courtyard fell silent. Master Hiroshi's eyes opened slowly as he whispered, "Only when nothing remains, the truth shines." Edward faltered briefly, his mocking smile wavering. Claire rushed closer, her voice trembling, "Daniel, don't let despair blind you." Mei stepped forward softly, her hands folding at her waist. Samuel turned, his back facing them, embodying finality. The air thickened with unspoken revelation, the dawn light blazing brighter. Daniel sat in his chamber, his head resting against cold wooden beams, as he whispered, "Why does every breath feel so heavy?" The silence of the room pressed upon him, like an unseen weight. Master Hiroshi entered slowly, his footsteps deliberate, and said, "Your struggle is not the chains of the world, but the chains you clasp within." Daniel's chest ached, his words bitter, "I have tried to let go, but everything clings to me." Edward's voice came from the corridor mocking, "Perhaps emptiness is too heavy for you." Claire stepped into the doorway, her eyes soft, saying, "Do not let his voice poison your heart." Mei bowed her head in quiet acknowledgement, while Samuel remained seated near the wall, silent but present, his stillness heavier than words. The lamp flickered, shadows stretching across the walls like echoes of doubt. Daniel pressed his palms to his face, whispering, "I meditate and find only noise. I pray and find only silence." Master Hiroshi said calmly, "Silence is not absence, but presence hidden by your own grasping." Edward laughed, saying, "If silence is presence, then failure must be enlightenment." Claire's eyes filled with tears as she said, "Daniel, listen to him with your heart, not with your fear." Mei added softly, "Even the quietest seed grows in darkness before it touches the light." Samuel adjusted his posture slightly, his eyes closed as if reflecting Daniel's inner storm. The chamber felt like a cage, yet also like a mirror showing him the chains he carried. Daniel's voice cracked as he said, "Every teaching feels like a wall. Every silence feels like abandonment." Master Hiroshi replied, "The wall is not around you but within, made of your fears." Edward leaned forward, sneering, "Perhaps the wall is too tall for your devotion to climb." Claire said softly, "Walls can fall when hearts open." Mei nodded gently and whispered, "Every storm carries its own calm if you let it pass." Samuel shifted his shoulders, still silent, embodying the stillness that pierced the tension. Daniel's tears spilled, soaking his robe as the lamp flame wavered, throwing restless shadows that mirrored his fractured heart. Daniel shouted suddenly, "If I am chained, then cut them free." His cry echoed in the chamber, raw and trembling. Master Hiroshi's voice remained steady. "You cannot sever what you still cling to." Edward clapped mockingly, saying, "A perfect performance of failure." Claire rushed forward, kneeling near Daniel, saying, "You are not failure. You are only afraid of yourself." Mai's gaze deepened as she whispered, "Fear is but a shadow of truth unseen." Samuel opened his eyes, slow and steady, his silence carrying the weight of eternity. The lamp burned brighter for a moment, casting fierce light on Daniel's broken posture. Daniel collapsed forward, his forehead touching the wooden floor as he whispered, "Then what am I but dust?" Master Hiroshi said, "Dust reflects the light as much as stone does." Edward paused, his smirk faltering, and muttered, "Dust is still dirt." Claire placed her hand on Daniel's shoulder, her voice trembling, "You are more than what you think you are." Mei bowed her head, her words calm, "In dust there is still the seed of truth." Samuel's silence settled heavy as a bell chime outside marked the passing night. The chamber no longer felt like a cage, but a furnace of trial. Daniel knelt in the meditation hall, sweat dripping down his brow as he whispered, "I cannot hold my breath of focus. My mind breaks like glass." Master Hiroshi stood before him, eyes fixed, saying, "Your mind must shatter before it can be clear." Edward leaned against the wall with folded arms, muttering, "Then he will never be whole again." Claire clasped her robe tightly and said, "Daniel, every fracture shows the light within." Mei sat quietly near the corner, her voice soft. "A river is strongest when it flows, not when it resists." Samuel walked past slowly, his silence echoing louder than any words. The hall was suffocating, incense smoke spiraling upward like the fragments of Daniel's crumbling patience. Daniel gasped heavily, clutching his knees, whispering, "I am drowning in silence, unable to breathe." Master Hiroshi said, "Only when you drown can you learn. You are the ocean itself." Edward smirked and said, "A perfect excuse for failure." Claire rushed closer, her words trembling. "Daniel, your struggle is not weakness, but transformation." Mai's eyes lowered, whispering, "Storms only last until the sky remembers its stillness." Samuel exhaled deeply, the sound steady, like an anchor in the suffocating air. The incense thickened, curling shadows onto Daniel's face as his body shook from within. Daniel collapsed forward, his forehead striking the wooden floor as he cried, "Why do you let me fail, Master?" Master Hiroshi answered, "Because failure is the doorway you refuse to open." Edward laughed coldly, "And behind that door is nothing but emptiness." Claire reached down, whispering, "Behind the door is yourself, Daniel, waiting for you to return." Mei raised her head gently, her tone calm, "Sometimes the door is not locked, only your fear is holding it closed." Samuel stood in silence, his shadow stretching across Daniel's trembling form. The incense burned low, casting the hall in dim orange light. Daniel shouted through tears, "If I am only failure, then end me here." His voice cracked, filling the hall with anguish. Master Hiroshi's voice did not waver, "Death is not your enemy, clinging is." Edward clapped mockingly, saying, "Then cling harder, Daniel, it's all you know." Claire placed both hands on Daniel's shoulders and cried, "No, you are not what he says, you are more than this pain." Mei whispered calmly, A tree bends in storm, but does not break if it remembers its roots. Samuel turned slowly, his silence a mirror to Daniel's rage. The hall grew darker, the candles flickering as if resisting the weight of his despair. Daniel's body slumped, exhausted, as he whispered, "I cannot go further. My strength has left me." Master Hiroshi knelt before him, eyes steady, and said, "When strength ends, truth begins." Edward's smirk faltered, his arms loosening, though he muttered, "Truth will not feed his emptiness." Claire stroked Daniel's arm and whispered, "You are not alone. You are held even when you fall." I bowed deeply, saying, "The ground that holds you is the same ground that frees you." Samuel exhaled once more, his silence flowing like a river, reminding them all of presence beyond struggle. The incense faded, and the hall sank into stillness heavy with unspoken truth. Daniel sat at the edge of the temple garden beneath a pale moon, whispering, "Every word, every silence, leaves me further from truth." Master Hiroshi stood nearby, his voice steady, "The truth is not hidden, it is you who turn away." Edward smirked while seated against the stone lantern, saying, "Perhaps truth is only an invention for the desperate." Claire approached, her voice trembling. "Daniel, he is not condemning you, he is showing you." I folded her hands and whispered, "The night is darkest before the dawn remembers its light." Samuel walked silently by the koi pond, his reflection shimmering with calm weight. The cool night air carried the sound of crickets, amplifying Daniel's turmoil. Daniel clutched a stone in his hand and said, "If truth lies within, then why can I not see it?" Master Hiroshi answered softly, "Because your eyes are filled with what you expect to see." Edward laughed, his voice sharp, "And when his expectations vanish, what will remain but nothing?" Claire knelt by Daniel, touching his arm, and said, "Nothing may be the doorway to peace, not despair." Mai tilted her head and whispered, "Even emptiness carries the seed of awakening, if you trust it." Samuel's silence deepened as he sat on the steps, unmoving like stone itself. The pond rippled slightly, carrying moonlight into fragments across the water. Daniel threw the stone into the pond, water splashing as he cried, "Then let me drown in nothing if that is all there is." Master Hiroshi remained still, saying, "To drown in nothing is to rise into everything." Edward scoffed and muttered, "Such riddles are empty as the pond itself." Claire grasped Daniel's hand, her voice urgent, "You are not drowning, you are awakening." Mai whispered, "The splash is brief, but the ripples endure until silence returns." Samuel stood in the shadows, his figure unmoving as the ripples reached the edge of the pond. The night air thickened, as though silence was a veil tightening around them all. Daniel stared into the pond's ripples and whispered, "Every answer I chase disappears like water in my hands." Master Hiroshi replied, "Because you do not need answers, only the courage to release the questions." Edward shook his head, muttering, "And without questions, he will become nothing at all." Claire wiped her tears and said, "Sometimes nothing is freedom, Daniel." Mai stepped forward and whispered, "Water reflects only when it is still, so must your heart." Samuel walked slowly along the pond's edge, each step measured as silence grew heavier. The ripples faded, leaving the pond a mirror under the moon. Daniel raised his trembling hands and whispered, "If nothing is freedom, then why am I so afraid?" Master Hiroshi said gently, "Because fear is the final illusion you cling to." Edward faltered, muttering, "Fear is the only truth he has ever known." Claire stepped closer, saying, "Fear only binds if you believe it has power." Mai bowed her head and whispered, "The shadow of fear cannot exist once you walk into its light." Samuel stopped walking, his stillness absolute, embodying the silence that followed. The pond shone like glass, reflecting moon and stars as though the heavens had come near. Daniel stood in the temple courtyard under the rising sun, his chest heaving as he cried, "I cannot hold on anymore, I am breaking apart." Master Hiroshi stepped forward, his calm voice steady, "Let it break, for only in breaking do you open." Edward sneered, though his voice cracked, "He is not opening, he is collapsing." Claire rushed to Daniel, grasping his shoulders, saying, "Collapse if you must, but know that even collapse carries life." Mei whispered gently, "Even ashes carry the breath of fire once more." Samuel sat near the courtyard gate, silent as stone, his presence anchoring the storm. The morning air trembled with birdsong, mingling with Daniel's sobs. Daniel collapsed to his knees, tears running as he gasped, "I surrender. I have no strength left." Master Hiroshi placed his hand above Daniel's bowed head, whispering, "In surrender lies the seed of awakening." Edward turned away, muttering bitterly, weakness dressed as wisdom. Claire knelt with Daniel, her voice trembling. "Your surrender is not weakness but courage." Mei bowed deeply and whispered, "The lotus blooms only in still water." Samuel's silence filled the courtyard, carrying weight like a bell. The morning breeze lifted fallen petals, scattering them around Daniel as though the world bowed with him. Daniel whispered shakily, "Then let me be nothing, for I am no longer myself." Master Hiroshi's eyes softened. "Nothing is not loss, it is freedom." Edward's voice faltered, "Freedom without self is emptiness, not life." Claire held Daniel's arm tightly, whispering, "Even nothing holds the breath of love." Mai's tone was serene as she said, "Nothing is the sky where all things belong." Samuel closed his eyes, embodying silence as truth. The sunlight struck Daniel's bowed form, and in his breaking, the courtyard shimmered with an unseen clarity that hushed even the mocking winds. Daniel's body trembled, then stilled, his whisper soft, "I feel." Silence. Master Hiroshi answered, "Silence is your true self, waiting to be heard." Edward's arms dropped, his eyes flickering with unease. "This silence, it frightens me." Claire smiled through tears, saying, "It does not frighten me, it heals me." Mei closed her eyes, whispering, "Silence carries the song of the eternal." Samuel's silent presence spread like a wave, enfolding the courtyard. The sunlight brightened, casting golden fire on Daniel's bowed form, transforming his despair into a profound calm that filled the air. Daniel lifted his face to the light, whispering, "The weight is gone, I am free." Master Hiroshi bowed his head slightly and said, "Freedom was always here, waiting for you to see." Edward lowered his gaze, silent for once, his smirk erased. Claire placed her hand on Daniel's back, saying, "Your peace is ours as well." Mai's voice was gentle. "What begins in despair ends in awakening." Samuel remained still, his silence resonating like a final verse of truth. The morning sun crowned the temple with brilliance, and Daniel's tears glistened, no longer of pain but of release. Daniel walked slowly across the temple grounds, the morning breeze cool against his face, whispering, "Everything feels new, yet nothing has changed." Master Hiroshi followed at a distance, saying, "Because it is not the world that has shifted, but your eyes." Edward trailed with hesitant steps, muttering, "Perhaps it is not change, but delusion." Claire smiled gently and said, "Even delusion may become truth when seen without fear." Mei walked beside the pond, her calm voice soft, "When the heart rests, the world rests too." Samuel stood silently beneath the archway, his stillness radiating peace. The leaves rustled, carrying a song Daniel had never heard before. Daniel paused beneath a blossoming tree, petals drifting onto his shoulders as he whispered, "Even the wind feels like a gift." Master Hiroshi said, "The gift has always been here, awaiting your acceptance." Edward frowned, muttering, "Gifts from nothing are illusions." Claire touched a petal softly and said, "Illusions fade, but beauty remains." Mei added, "Every petal falls, yet the tree is never diminished." Samuel remained by the tree trunk, his silence echoing through the calm air. Daniel lifted his face, no longer searching, only receiving. The world seemed to breathe with him, and the silence carried warmth instead of weight. Daniel sat on a stone bench, exhaling deeply, whispering, "I no longer chase, I only sit." Master Hiroshi nodded, saying, "To sit without seeking is the beginning of walking." Edward leaned against a pillar, eyes uncertain, muttering, "What life is there in sitting still?" Claire laughed softly. There is more life here than in all the running before. Mei folded her hands and said, stillness reveals the steps hidden from restless eyes. Samuel's gaze lingered on Daniel, silent approval shining in his calm presence. The temple bell rang faintly, not heavy but light, as if joining their stillness. Daniel leaned forward, whispering, I thought peace was far away, yet it was here all along. Master Hiroshi smiled faintly. Distance was only the shadow of your own doubt. Edward lowered his gaze, muttering, perhaps I have been chasing shadows too. Claire touched his arm gently and said, then you too may rest if you choose. Mei whispered, shadows dissolve when light is no longer resisted. Samuel closed his eyes, embodying the calm spreading through them. The breeze carried a single petal across Daniel's lap, landing without weight, yet with meaning deeper than words. Daniel closed his eyes, whispering, I am not searching, I am here. Master Hiroshi replied, to be here is the only journey worth taking. Edward exhaled, the first hint of relief in his tone. Perhaps I too can rest a moment. Claire smiled warmly. Rest and you will see that the journey was never leaving you. Mei bowed her head and whispered, here is where the river meets the sea. Samuel remained motionless, his silence like a mirror reflecting their peace. The temple ground shimmered beneath morning light, and for the first time, no one spoke further, for nothing needed to be said. Daniel sat at the edge of the temple garden as twilight deepened, whispering, I once searched endlessly, but I see now I was never lost. Master Hiroshi stood nearby, saying, the seeker has always been home, though he never knew it. Edward leaned on a pillar, voice hushed. Perhaps I too was chasing shadows that never mattered. Claire smiled warmly and said, then shadows may guide us to light if we allow them. Mei placed her palms together and whispered, in presence, there is no need for arrival. Samuel remained still near the gate, his silence echoing deeper than words. The lanterns flickered alive, casting a gentle glow as the evening air embraced them. Daniel rose slowly, saying softly, I see the world not as burden, but as blessing. Master Hiroshi bowed his head and replied, the world has not changed. Your heart has. Edward exhaled sharply, whispering, then I too wish to see with such eyes. Claire touched his arm gently, saying, your heart will open when you let it rest. Mei said, the sky reflects peace when clouds move aside. And old Samuel's silence anchored them, his presence mirroring the stillness Daniel now carried. The evening breeze lifted petals across the temple stones, drifting like whispers of unseen truth. Daniel walked toward the temple steps, whispering, the path was never outside, it was within every step. Master Hiroshi followed, saying, the step you take now is the same as the first, yet you see it newly. Edward muttered, then even I may begin again without shame. Claire smiled. Every ending holds a beginning if the heart allows. Mei whispered, the river never stops flowing, and neither does the truth. Samuel remained still at the bottom of the steps, his silence greeting Daniel like an old friend. The temple bell tolled softly, marking not an end but a return. Daniel reached the top of the steps and turned, whispering, I am not seeking anymore. I am here. Master Hiroshi's eyes glowed warmly. To be here is to be whole. Edward bowed his head, whispering, then perhaps I can learn to be here too. Claire wiped a tear, saying, here's where love resides without condition. Mei whispered, here is the silence that holds everything. Samuel's silence stretched across the courtyard, encompassing them all. The lantern flames danced softly, their glow steady against the night, as though reflecting the peace filling Daniel's heart. Daniel gazed over the horizon beyond the temple, whispering, I am not lost. I am here. Master Hiroshi closed his eyes with a faint smile, and here is where eternity begins. Edward stood quietly, for once without a word, his silence speaking more than doubt ever had. Claire whispered warmly, the journey is no longer a chase, but a homecoming. Mei bowed with hands joined, saying, the truth has always waited patiently. Samuel faced the horizon in silence, his stillness vast as the night itself. The temple faded into quiet, leaving only breath and stars above, eternal and infinite.